What's going on? It's Jason Heath, and it's great to reconnect with Kevin Brandino Brandon. Brandino is a 9-time Grammy Award-winning bassist, producer, composer, and arranger, and he's also an Eastman artist. I have worked for Eastman for several years on the bass side of things, and I had Brandino back on the podcast in 2016. I can't believe it's been 5 years. So today we're catching up with Brandino about what has been going on in his life ever since that. He had some health issues not too long after that interview, but he is back. We talk about 5-string basses. He plays several Eastman 5-string basses. Get into all of that and more. You can check out the description below for more information. Let's dive into it.
You get a 5-string bass. Well, why do you get it? Well, you get it to play low notes, to utilize the low end. If you don't, then you just get either a regular 4-string or you get a 4-string with an extension on it. I mean, there's no sense of having a 5-string unless you're going to utilize the low register for something, whatever it is.
And it opens up so many possibilities. You know, you can see my 4-string with the extension in the back there. But you know, when you get a 5, and that's something that you've done your whole, you know, for a long time now at this point. The embrace the 5-string, and you know, 5-strings can get a reputation as having like a dead sound sometimes if they're not set up right. But that hasn't been the case with the basses of yours that I've heard and played. I mean, you managed to get a setup that's nice and open, and I'm sure it's strings and then just set up in general, and then of course the way that you play. But you know, I think back to playing some orchestra passages, you know, Beethoven symphonies and such, trying to get around that extension. Some of the stuff you just can't do on an extension.
Well, you know, I was fortunate to whenever I met Ruben back in the day at the NAMM show, and he was laughing. But you know, I work with Benjamin Wright, the great arranger Benjamin Wright, that's done, you know, all the hits for with Verdine White's Earth, Wind and Fire, you know, Justin Timberlake, Rihanna, Usher, you know, the list goes on. When I got off the road originally, he called me, was I classically trained? And I started doing his dates. He was writing parts like for a 5-string electric bass. So I told him I was going to go find a company that could commission to build me bass, which was Eastman, because I couldn't really find anything in town. And the stuff that I had found was really garbage. It was just, you know, it was garbage. I go, man, you want me to pay 20 grand for that? The bass doesn't even sound. So the late John Peterson, that was the godfather here in town, I got with him. We went on my basses. We went through 4 different manufacturers of strings.
Wow.
To find out which one would actually bring the instrument in. And John had passed away this year. So Ralph Acala, which is the young Luther, the only Luther we have in LA, which I've known from World of Strings before it closed, which now he's at Eastman, which you know that. Ralphie took over where John, you know, once John passed. So the bottom line is the whole thing with 5-string is be able to get it so that you don't have a lot of tension on the instrument, especially with the bow, but at the same time that the B string is not too loose so that it's so flabby that it takes forever to pull it. So there's really a fine match and issue going between the low string and the high strings to get it so that the tension across the bass is pretty even. But especially when you go to that low string that you're not fighting with it. So what I found out, because one of my good friends, Dominic Genova, he had a Grunart, which I had bought a 4-string with an extension, but he had a 5-string Grunart that he had got from Ohio Symphony, one of the symphonies 20 years ago. So we started talking, and I brought him down to Eastman originally with me. We took a trip down there, met Ruben, and saw what they had. So I don't want to really claim it, but it's funny because there's about 4 other bass players now that are younger than me playing 5-string. So I'm not going to disregard Dominic, because Dominic's been doing TV and movie for years doing that bass. But as far as I'm claiming for commercial music records, that I'm the one that started that in this town, which I already know I have. And it's on records. It's on records. And Kelly was asking me this morning, did you do that LA string song? It's called LA Song or something on Ty Dolla $ign. I said, yeah, I did the original date because I know him and his father, Tyrone, the trumpet player. We did dates at Death Row Records, back in the day with Suge Knight and all that. So he said, man, that's great. I said, Benjamin Wright's a great arranger. He said, so you played on that? I said, yeah, I played on the whole album. Whatever there's strings, it's me. And it's the same thing with Well I Am, and the list goes on. So I've kind of patterned myself only because originally, back in the day, I claimed that I'm the first bass player that ever made the first 6-string bass electric. And there's a thing about Anthony Jackson. And I said, okay, I met Anthony when I joined Aretha and played Carnegie Hall in 81, met up with him, showed him my bass. He goes, somebody's building one. I said, yeah, but you're seeing one in front of you. So that means that I trumped you. And I'm not telling you because he's a great player, man. Anthony Jackson, he's a bad dude.
Yeah.
But the claim I was trying to do, because people told me at the NAMM show back then, well, you're crazy. Are you on drugs? I said, no, I've been playing an electric bass since I was 9 years old. I said, I'm sick of that. I need a range. I need a bigger range. So I contracted a couple of friends of mine, Kenny Climack and Cooney, that owns Performance Guitars here in LA, contracted them years ago, early 70s, mid 70s. So we started working on that approach. So anyway, that's what's up there, So when I called Bass Player Magazine, which there was no Bass Player Magazine, it was Guitar Player Magazine that was doing both. They said, well, you're crazy, and it's Anthony Jackson. I go, well, they're not going to give a poor little kid, a little railroad track baby from South Central, any claim to a big New York session player, but I had mine before him. And Jimmy Johnson can testify to that because he turned me on the GHS that made prototype strings for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, so I've been doing this a long time. But anyway, getting back to the 5-string so we can talk about Eastman, our company. So that's kind of what's up with that. And I remember taking my Grunart with the extension, beautiful bass. I took it to a hip hop session with Will I Am, and it ended up being a triple date. And I was having problems because I wanted low Ds, low C sharps. And with that extension, I said, I'll never go on a pop date, on an Arco date with an extension on a 4-string. It ain't gonna happen. I mean, I really struggled with that, trying to reinvent, how am I gonna do this? I'm gonna leave this open so when I have to play E, I'm gonna have to finger it because the stop is already open on the D flat and stuff like that. It was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And, so I'm seeing people with 5-string basses. I said, I wonder who was playing that first before you got one. They usually don't say anything, but that's all good. I already know, because obviously we were talking about that somewhat in the interview that we did 5-6 years ago or whatever. And I think I started working with Ben consistently either 2008 or 10 or whatever. I've worked with him before, but since I've been in town, I get calls because I'm not on the road.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's either here nor there. It happens when it happens.
Well, on a recording date too, it's funny because you think about extensions. If you're just playing in a symphony section or something, there might be just little inconsistencies or sounds, or like what you're talking about, like leaving the E open or not. You might not think about it so much, but if you're on the mic and you're doing a record date for Will I Am or something like that, all of a sudden, all those things are like, is the extension really in tune exactly? Like how? Like what are you gonna? And yeah. It's incredible how fussy they can. Like I have a great extension. It's been set up by really good people, but I have to be so careful to not get any buzzing or rattling or anything like that. And that's the sort of stuff that just can't. It's got to be. It's not going to fly in a record date, I'll bet.
Well, yeah, it's one of the guys that one of the brothers that I know here that does movie stuff. We were talking last night, and he bought a 5-string. And he said, "Well, I ain't gonna mention name, but he says, man, the first time I took it out, I really had to figure out about going crossing the strings, and really did it because it was so much different than a 4-string." And he said, well, I learned my lesson that I really had to get that down. And I was laughing. I said, I already been there, done it. Because the bottom line, usually with a 4-string, you have a certain amount of arch. You really can't get a bit as that much of an arch, or basically your A and D string are just too hard to play. I mean, you try to go up in thumb position or do a chromatic on the string and get up to thumb position, you really can't push that octave down with your third finger. I mean, it has to be that high, basically, for the bow. So you have to really choose or know when you're crossing strings, because it's really hard to get that kind of curvature for 5 strings when everybody's used to setting up, either for jazz or orchestra playing, the contour of the bridge.
Yeah.
Which me and Ralphie have talked about. That really becomes that's why I have 2 instruments, one set up for arco and one for pits. So I don't have to go through that.
Yeah, it's tricky for the bow, and that's the thing, is most people are used to setting up a 4-string, right? So they haven't had as much. I remember playing. There's a great bassist in the Lyric Opera of Chicago who only plays on 5 strings, and he has the curvature on the bridge works well for him for arco, but it's like probably it would be really annoying for pizzicato if you were playing mostly pizzicato line. So I get why you'd want the 2 setups, but I've really enjoyed. I mean, the 2 5 strings of yours that I've seen are really free and open, and the setup seems great on them.
Well, that's because I think I bought them in 2010 or 11. Professor Harvey bought one too, and he goes, our bass is about 10 years old. And the ones that I have, or the ones that I've seen recently at the show, 2 years ago, they're different. They're differently built. And I don't even know if they're as good as the ones that me and Harvey bought 10 years ago. They might be overbuilt. I'm not really sure, because I haven't been out to the factory for years, obviously. But I think we got some of the prime stuff really at a good price. And, I don't know where they're made, because you know better than I do. But both of them are different instruments. And the one I have set up for jazz bass, Professor Harvey really likes it. It's a thinner neck. It's really easy to get around, but it has a really great sound. And my engineer have told me both of them they're built differently, and the way they're shaped, and the tops are different. All that. So I just looked out. So the one that I sent you the other day was I call it the Justin Timberlake one. And my engineer likes that one better because it's more focused. Because the other one that I have, I've been told by the concert master, right, which is the violinist, right?
Exactly.
Okay, I'm just making sure, from a classical point of view, that I haven't lost all my information. So one of my concert masters had told me on a date. One day I brought one bass in, one the other day he goes, man, that other bass, I like that one better. I said, why? He said, that other one that you bring in, hey, I can hear it going into my microphone. It takes over the whole orchestra. It spreads that big. The spread on that one's so big. My engineer told me that. So, that's my jazz bass. And usually if I'm doing that, I'm just doing a record anyway. So I don't have to worry about it messing with strings. They're just getting the pits on it, and it's big and round. And it's funny because I went to one studio for an artist, and the engineer comes and says, man, I've never heard a bass sound that good. I said, well, I said, I don't want to brag, but you never heard me, but you've never heard a 5-string bass like this, because there's only one like this in LA. Sorry. And I was told by one of the younger gentlemen coming up that the Berlin Symphony, that's all they do is play 5-string. So, the next time if I ever go back to Germany for Warwick or whatever, I would love to go to whatever, Munich, Mittenwald, or wherever those things, and just see how their approach. Because I've been told that basically the Berlin Symphony, there's 8 bass players that came to the, a Kodak Center, I guess a couple of years ago. And it was 8 bass players with 8 5-string bass. So I missed the concert, but I would be able to love to talk to somebody if they could talk English, and just get kind of, because that's where it comes from. So that's why I got it. So it made it a lot easier on Benjamin Wright's dates, that if I had to do a low string or something, or do a divisi with my stand partner, we had double. We had the original and something below, you know, which I call booty bass, so that it has that, if they need it, fine. If they don't, then, you know, they don't have to use it. But, you know, I've done that on a lot of dates, you know, and usually on Will I Am with the arranger conductor Henri Gill, you know, usually I'll ask him, and then he'll just tell me, yeah, drop it down, you know, so then we don't have to worry about it. It's right there. D's right there, you know, either open string or your fingernail on your, you know, on your second string, on the A string to D, and I'm dropping down, you know, and it's like it's in tune.
Mm-hmm.
It's like playing a 5-string electric, except it's real big.
Yeah.
Real big. That one's real big. It's a big bass. It's really too big for me, but hey, what can I say? Sometimes beggars can be choosers.
Well, you make it work. I mean, I always remember at that Roboth Institute a couple of years ago, you did something really. One moment I remember that was really cool is you brought some. It was either from Will I Am or maybe Justin Timberlake, and you were just like talking to the kids there about how the bass line got built, and you were like playing what you did, and just kind of talking about the whole process. It was really interesting to like, and interesting for me, but really interesting for them too. I'm sure, to kind of like get a look inside what a session on a major song like that is like.
Right. Yeah, well, you know, my teacher, Nat Gangursey, was the godfather in his town, going back probably from the 40s and 50s when he moved from Chicago to LA doing silent films with Red Callender. You know, he told me 90% of the stuff you play will be whole notes.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, the other 10% will be stuff that you'll never be able to play, so don't worry about it. Because it'll just be stuff that really isn't meant for the bass. It's probably meant more for the cello. And there's been times that they said, well, can you play this line, a cello line, or whatever? And then you start dealing with thumb position and crossing over the strings or whatever, which a lot of people don't really have really worked on that. But the thing about when we did the Roboth, I brought my cello bass. Yep. Which has a high C string on it with a low E. And you heard it. I just heard that bass sounds great. Yeah. I don't know what model it is of Eastman. It's all wood bass, but that thing from day one, it didn't have to break it in. It was great. And the thing I had noticed that I had told the kids, when I'm preparing for it, when I was going up high, I was losing space because I had my 3 fingers here and doing this between the 2 notes like this. I was already overshooting because it was almost like a violin that you had to use one finger to go up and down and, you know, go a half step up, because if I did it with my fingers, I'd be sharp. And I didn't even notice that until I had prepared that piece.
Wow.
You know, but I love Eastman. They're affordable. They sound great. I had some slack from some of my colleagues saying, well, you're playing Chinese basses instead of German. And I said, well, why don't you buy me one of those basses? Since you make all the money, why don't you buy me all the basses, then maybe I'll play that one, the one you bought me. But from an economical point of view, I told them this is what's up, especially after the pandemic. You know, money's tight, blah, blah, blah. And I said, when I go into a session, I usually know the engineer. It's usually the same one. And I usually ask the engineer how the bass sounds. And they said, the bass sounds great. And I said, well, they don't come out like if I'm in a symphony orchestra. Ask me what brand, where's the label inside? Do you have a flashlight so we can look at it? All that patina stuff that goes in the classical world that you know about. They don't ask. All they ask is if the bass sounds good or not. And the bass sounds good, and that's all they care about.
Yeah. Well,
so it's not a big thing. I'm not the first violinist saying that I have a Stradivarius. You know, it's not that kind of scenario. Yeah. So realistically, most people don't know anyway. You know, some engineers come out, hey man, where's the plug? They did that when I did Outkast. We were talking about Outkast because they said some new stuff came out, and I was talking to Arabian Prince that's got a lot of Grammys from NWA. He goes, hey man, no, they're doing this now. You need to find out about it. And I said, well, I haven't followed that. I'm just getting back on track now. And was saying that, but the bottom line, when I did Will I Am, I was at, I don't know, Larrabee. Larrabee? I think I was Larrabee North and Larrabee South. Whatever. The one in West LA is the original one. I think it was Larrabee. I'm not really sure. So anyway, I talked to the lead. I said, well, let me talk to the lead engineer. So they called in. I said, well, I need a couple of Neumanns. I need U87s matched. Well, we don't have none. Well, you need to go get one. You're Larrabee, you don't have a U87? Come on. So I said, are you the head engineer? He goes, yeah. He said, well, where's the plug? I said, sorry, sir. I'm playing Arco. There's not an output jack like an electric bass. And you're telling me that you're the lead engineer? Have you ever recorded an acoustic bass? So he's kind of looking at me. So, well, it's going to take you a couple hours. I said, I'm on the clock. So I'm getting paid. You need to give me 2 mics. I said, because, man, I'm thinking, what's the guy's name that ran that? The guy, I'm sorry about the guy's name. I'm a well-known engineer here that had 2 studios, and now he has plugins from his famous studio in Hollywood that he had for years. When I recorded Bobby Lyle's first album for Atlantic that hit a #1 chart, I was in Hollywood, and he told me how to mic for pizzicato acoustic bass. And he goes, the bottom line, you have matched mics. The same mic, put it on both sides, off the side of the bridge, and you put them, you pan them hard left and right, so you don't have a panning problem. Because if you had them both here, they cancel each other out.
Right.
So you do a half.
Phase.
Go, it's out of phase. So he says you go hard left and hard right. So when you do it, now you can put both of them in the middle, bring up the faders, and get the sound that you want out of the instrument that you need in the mix. So he came back, and then we did this record. And I remember I started at midnight, and I was walking out at 8 o'clock. So I was telling one of the guys this morning at lunch, that's golden time. And I was the contractor, because I'm the only one there in the union. And I'm the bass player. And I did 4 overdub parts on 4 different songs. So I told Andre 3000, I said, well, because I'm here and blah, 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 let me say like you have a bass orchestra underneath you. So I double tracked 4 times, So he went for it and all that. And I think 2 of the songs or 3 of the songs, it made the album. I have no idea. And I was telling them that when I brought the union contract in, the lady that wasn't there that long with contracts was yelling at me because she said, well, people like you give the union musicians a bad rep. And I said, well, wait a minute. I've been doing this for a long time. I don't even know who you are. And I said, I worked my ass off, excuse my French. And I just came back from burying one of my relatives the day before. And I'm starting at midnight, and I'm going straight through 8 o'clock, and I'm doing 4 songs that I had to write charts for and write the whole thing to know how the track went and what key it was in, So, and then we had me and Andre, I said, sing the parts. So he sang the parts he wanted me to do. So I did that. So, there was a lot of work involved. Now I'm arranging and writing bass parts and all that stuff. So, man, give me a break. The money I charged was not really to what it was, because if I got credit on it as a writer, writing the bass part, I would have been a millionaire right now.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously. Because I was telling Kelly and Arabian, it sold 18 million units at $20 per unit.
Wow.
So you add it up.
Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah, so my 6 or 10 grand I made ain't nothing compared to 18 million times $20. Thank you.
I remember you talking about the kind of the whole business music thing with the kids at the Roboth Institute. And it was really interesting because people don't realize what goes into the business, like the business of music. There's so much that, you start out playing and you're playing your scales and you're playing your pieces and you realize, but there's so much involved. Like just that story right there kind of shows you like all the levels that you have to think about as an artist.
Well, I might have went over their head because I know there was a lot of young kids.
Well, but there were some teenagers too. No, I think
good.
I think it's really interesting for the
Well,
folks that are
the good thing is that once you get through all the normal stuff on your instrument, it's all about business because it's how you conduct, how you look. It's all that. It's a business scenario. And I tell people sometimes you don't get the call or sometimes you don't get the gig. It has nothing to do with your playing it. They're looking for a certain look and blah, blah, blah. And that's just how it is. It's the business of music. So it's a business and they got who's ever putting out the money or showing the money, they need to get a return on their money. So don't worry about if you didn't get it because it might not have nothing to do playing wise. It might have to do visually or whatever. They're trying to get, a money-making venture that they're making money back on. And what they need you for might not be what you think what they need you for. So, even on like some of the new shows, they say if you're over 30, we can't hire you. And that's coming from a producer and the director. So realistically, by law, that's really against the law because that's discrimination. But, people need to work. So what's somebody going to do a lawsuit? I'm 50 years old. They don't call me and all that. You know what I mean? Because it's business. They have the right to hire who they want. Even though there might be discrimination, that's just how it is. They want a younger look. They want to get a younger audience to look because it's young people. So that's just a business, so it's all good. At least I got in when I got in because I was a kid at 24 playing with Aretha and I had done all my jazz stuff with all the legends before that. So I was the youngest kid until Teddy came on, Aretha's son. He was the youngest guy in the group. When he came on, he was the youngest. But before then, I was the youngest guy in the group, and took that for a ride until the ride, I had to get off the ride, and it's all good. But, when, I stayed on that gig to buy my house, to set up and the whole thing, like I had told you, or I don't know if I told you, now I'm at the age I am, 67, and God's let me live this long, even though I died twice 4 years ago in the hospital. So I already knew that when I got to this age that I would be writing repertoire for bass. Like some of the pieces I've given you or Dr. Kate I already knew I was going to do that. So I started doing that. I got Dorico. You already know that we talked about that, and, I already knew that was going to happen. So I'm in a good part of my life because I see some of the young kids that I've mentored. They're going for master degrees. I got one at USC that's going for his doctorate. That's from Oakland that I try to hook you up with, and he's coming from a bad situation, and he's all loving school. And I said, this will set you up the rest of your life. So, I see all these kids doing stuff, and it's all good because I don't want to do that. And I'm not going to do it, so I sit here doing my thing and writing some new music or whatever, doing stuff with Momo, our Brandino Momo comedy show, which has become a whole nother scenario, besides me working on some more original songs or whatever pieces, doing that, and I was telling somebody that, I'm playing some of my old Fenders because I'm a Warwick endorsee for years. But when I got sick, I had my electric bass luthier, if you want to call it that, Greg Coates, they used to work at World of Strings with Ralphie back in the day. I had him going through all my closets and redoing all my old instruments and make sure they work. So when I started the band with Robbie, the New Experience, I said, let me go old school. And he liked that. So I'm playing just a regular jazz bass from the 60s. It's got that sound, and it works. I'm not trying to play R&B. I'm just trying to stay in that rock thing, and that way, basically, he's got 6 string, I got 4 strings, and it makes you think a different way playing lines.
Yeah.
But I ain't trying to play booty bass, not on that. So, things were going real good from that aspect, and, I'm a new father because I got a new 6.5-month-old boxer, Belgian Malinois pit mix puppy.
That's a handful.
Where's Roscoe at? I don't know where Roscoe is. You talk about dealing with something new.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother thing. He's 6.5 months and he's 50 pounds.
Yeah, that's a serious project right there.
Yeah. My sister, she took him out last week during the birthday week, and she came back and said, "What's up?" Well, man, he likes to sniff it. He's a puppy. He ain't a puppy, he's a damn dog. Because he's 50 pounds. And you look at this day, he still falls over the place on all that because he's a puppy, but he's a big puppy.
Yeah.
And every time I walk in with Billy, they go, "He's a puppy. He's as big as the dog." I said, "She's 9 years old. He's 6.5 months." She goes, "What? He's a puppy?" I said, "He's a puppy. You don't look like a puppy to me." So that's that's been my new fatherhood, whatever you want to call duty or whatever, So it's he definitely has some life around here. Believe me.
Oh, I'll bet.
You got one. You got a puppy, so you already know what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I can only imagine. My dog's 12 pounds. I think he's enough of a handful. And if he's a puppy at 50 pounds, that's my brother has a dog that's about 80 pounds, this big pit bull mix. And if that dog makes a decision, look out,
Well, Roscoe's going to get there. They're telling me he's going to hit 80 to 90 pounds.
Yeah. Wow.
And it's all good. He's a sweetheart. I mean, he's like a little man. I'm serious. It's so funny compared to my other dog, Louis, that passed away, because Louis was a fright. I bring him in a dog park. He's going to single out a dog, and that's it. He's off and running, man. I'm telling you. I've had to pull him off so many dogs. He was just a force to reckon with, seriously.
Wow.
So it's kind of a change in my older years that I have, that I have a dog that's a little bit more tame. But we'll see how that goes, because he's got a boxer, pit, and Belgian Malinois mix. So we'll see what side of the brain that he really fully develops.
Yeah, it could be, it'll be interesting to see for sure. Wow.
Exactly. I'm telling within a year and a half, I'll know what I got. So anyway, back to the bass thing. That's kind of what's up. Anything else, Jason, that you want to talk about or delve?
Well, I mean, there's so many things I want to. It's funny because I think we've talked every couple of weeks for the last few years, more or less, maybe more than a few weeks every. But so I should thank you for a bunch of things. Thank you for introducing me to Dorico. You hipped me to Dorico, and I remember talking like a few months ago with you about, because I had been using Finale for a long time. I was playing around with Sibelius. And then I started experimenting with Dorico, and I use that thing every week for projects, and that's an incredible app. So thank you for that. That has been a real experience.
Well, you know what it is that Daniel, I forgot his last name, that originally was with Sibelius when Sibelius was owned by Avid, and all that. He was the one that was writing the code. So he had told me at the last NAMM show I saw, and before before Abbott cleared house up there by you with all the Sibelius team, he had told me wait a couple of years because I'm going to make a program that's going to have the best of Finale and Sibelius in. So finally it became available, and that XML format, I have one of the kids, John, John.
Yep.
The Prodigy kid. He was sending me everything in Sibelius because I think that's what they use at USC. So when I asked him for an XML, he goes, "Oh, you're using Dorico." I said, "Yeah. I like the program better. I like how it's laid out, easier. And it seems like I can do more faster and easier than going through because when it went from Sibelius 5 to 7, the whole front end just got real cluttered. I mean, you had to go down 2 or 3 levels, and it was like, oh man, I'm not trying to go through, I'm not trying to go through a calculus test here, seriously. So it made it a lot easier for that, So I had John transcribe some of those things that I had sent you.
I love those. All those. So that, just thinking about the breadth of your, like all the that you've done in your career, like these burning solos that you were sending me of the transcriptions that John was doing. It's wild. It's like, if you think of it just as like an etude to work on or a solo to work on, it's like, it's wild. What was coming out of your brain on those dates?
Hey man, all I know is I was young and some of that stuff I got, didn't even know 40 years ago they had taped it and I had told Jeff, forgot his last, Donnelly, I think that's the last name, Jeff. I told him that in this day and age, he could never sync it back in the old days, but I said they can sync anything. So he found a production house wherever he lived that was able to, they matched it, that we put up, and I scared myself looking at it, the thumb position and trying to do that and up and down the neck and all that. And one of the pieces John really liked, you saw, man, you gave me, because he's got perfect pitch and plays piano or bass. It doesn't make any difference. Mm-hmm. And his sister's a violinist. Oh, it's like one of those things. I go, it's one of those kind, one of those brainy kids, real sweetheart. And he says, hey, man, Kev, you gave me a run for my money. I said, good. That's good. So, there's another thing. I don't know if you have time.
Sure, yeah.
I wanted to do a Zoom with me, you, and Harvey, Professor Harvey.
I'd love that.
Talked about.
Yeah.
I talked to him. I told him we were going to do it at 11. I said I had to postpone. I said I'm going to give you a call. He said I'll be around. So I wanted to do that not only because he was the second guy that bought a 5-string from Eastman, mm-hmm. and he got a real Jermaine. Paul has it now, his student, which is coming up. He's at Northridge and, he's on fire and all that. But his bass, from all the basses, he's got the biggest one. But he told me he took that in the orchestra here in town. And the conductor says, you need to find me 3 or 4 other bass players that have a 5-string that sounds like you, because that bass alone took over the section.
Oh, wow.
Whoever the section leader was, he was in the dust because that bass is that powerful.
Oh,
and Jermaine got in a car accident and messed it up. It's at Lisa's. He don't have the money to fix it. But I talked to him about that. I said, don't ever sell that bass because you ain't going to find another one like that. I'm telling you, because they come and go like that. You know how manufacturers are.
Oh, yeah.
Some year they have a good run. Some years they're okay and all that. Plus, it's 10 years old now. So it's got some age on it. The way that a 5-string works mechanically, mm-hmm. and physically, how it's built, and the idiosyncrasies of each instrument, because it's different.
Yeah.
There's no consistency, brand or manufacturers or countries that it come from. Usually it's always going to be bigger than a 4-string, obviously, no matter if it's 3/4 or 7/8 or full-size bass. They're gonna make the mechanics of the instrument different to handle that low B.
You bet. Yeah, exactly.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what's up with that. So I don't know if there's anything else.
Well, one thing that you reminded me of talking about your cello bass, and this came up a couple weeks ago on an Eastman call. Is that cello bass? That's technically like a 5/8 bass, right? You would call it?
Yeah. John said he thought somebody screwed up in the factory in Shanghai, right? That's where Eastman is, right?
In Beijing, but
Beijing, okay,
yeah.
Beijing,
yeah.
Shanghai, Beijing. I know I get them confused, but anyway, he said, I think somebody screwed up over there, Kev. And because he was saying the neck was real thick, he wanted to shave it down. I said, don't. Leave it the way it is. You mess with anything, it'll change the sound. Well, you're going to get tired. I said, well, the neck is smaller than my big Justin Timberlake 7/8 Eastman bass I have. Believe me, that's like playing nothing compared to that bass. Because that bass has a sound. Oh, and can you hear the bass? Yeah, we can hear it. We'll tone it down. It's that. It does what it does.
Yeah.
And the thing about it might be a new bass. Who cares? Because I'm not playing classical music that I need to bring the date of receipt that I bought it. And usually on that, you want it to be more clean or brighter because you can hear the notes better. You can always warm it up.
Mm-hmm.
But basically the articulation, you can hear it. On movie days, it's like muffled. It's like having a mute on your bass. They don't want that. They got to hear it.
It's an
so the cello
point.
bass it's technically, I wanted a 5/8 case. Eastman said they didn't supply those because they never get asked for 5/8 basses. They use a half size for kids, right? Then they go to 3/4. I'm asking you that because you're an educator. You've taught university. So it is supposedly, technically, it's a 5/8 bass.
Yeah. And
string length. Yeah, because it's not a regular 1/4 inch. A 3/4 inch is 41. Pretty much that was the standard rule. This one, I think, is 39 or 38.
Wow.
From the nut to that.
Okay.
So it can't be wherever they have the bridge set up with the F-holes and the little diamond cuts that they do. Obviously, that's where they put the bridge, right? So what I remember measuring, I think it's like 39.
Okay.
So it's not a 3/4 because it doesn't have a string length of 41 inches.
Well, we've been talking about working on a 5/8 pattern, and so it came up a couple weeks ago. Like, have we made a 5/8 bass before? And I said, well, I know you made at least one, and because Brandino has one. And then Ralph said, oh yeah, I know that bass. And so anyway, I don't know if it was a mistake. It's a good mistake if they did because it's a nice bass.
You heard it.
Yeah, no, it's a great instrument. Yeah.
You heard it. That low E, Ralph Armstrong, which you hopefully know who he is from Detroit, he thought that was my low 5-string bass. I said, no, man, listen to the note. It's an E. It's not a B. But he was impressed because, Ralphie's a great bass player.
Yeah.
Did Ma Vishna, all that back in the day. But he's an upright bass player. Played in the Detroit Symphony a long time ago. So he's been classically trained. So he hadn't mentioned it. So Kev, that bass sounds great. He thought it was one of my low basses.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. But I'm trying to clean up my living room here from me being sick. Slowly but surely, I'm getting stuff taken out of my living room to take it because I've got a nice wood floor made of oak that's about 70 years old. So when you play the bass in here, I got a 3-foot subwoofer all underneath my house, crawl space.
Oh, nice.
It's unbelievable. So that bass is one of a kind because Professor Harvey tried to get one. And he called, he goes, you can special order it, but we're going to have to get Brandino's bass back. We don't have a pattern on it. So you're telling me they're asking about a pattern, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, but it just came up, and I thought that was hilarious. So yeah, because I think more people want to play 5/8 these days. It's there's more demand for them, from what I understand.
Well, you know what? It didn't originally when I got a bass, it had a low B on it. So my engineer, Big Mike Gunnarsson, that I've had for years, he comes over, he's the engineer. And he goes, Kev, I'm hearing the 3rd octave on the B. There's no fundamental. He says it's too small of the body. I go, well, yeah, I know. I'm just getting from engineer. I know what I know, but you know what you know. Listen to it. Because he always goes here and listens to my bass. He goes, man, there's no fundamental. So when I put an E on it, there's a fundamental.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, I wanted to make this a cello bass because I wanted it that size. I wanted to have that high C that you didn't have to go all the way up, constipated in these, up there at the top of the fingerboard because it ain't going to speak because bass ain't built like that. It's built to play bass notes. But with that cello bass, it's one of a kind. It's a beautiful instrument. And every time I hear that little demo I was doing while I was warming up, from the Rabath.
Yeah.
It sounds, I couldn't believe how it sounded and how protected.
Thanks for chatting, Brandino. Thank you for watching. If you want to learn more, check out the links below. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.